No. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. So for those of you sitting inside of Rumble and Pilled, thank you, S. Jones. Please give me a 5x5 if you hear the stream correctly. I'm going to see if I can forestall a problem before we get to the problem. Thank you, S. Jones. Thank you, sober lady. Okay, let's get started. I am going to bring up my intro.
She claws through the curtain, exposing the flaw. No map, no guide, just shadow she tracks. Every thread pulled is a world turned back. The faithful will know, though the words may be few. To the blind, every truth is a riddle untrue. Claws of reason, eyes of flame, unmasking the player in the shadow game, where the silence breaks, the hidden shake. She names the unspoken, the world away. Historian's eye on the ruins of men, cycles repeating again and again. Digital soldier, a phantom, a spark, a voice through the wires ignites the dark. Voice of iron, breath of dust, piercing the empire built on rust. Keeper of the flame, she stakes her claim, illuminates the nameless, calls them by name. Through Babylon's towers, through Rome's broken gates, she carries the question that history hates. No creed, no tyrant, no mask will remain. When the feisty one whispers your true name. Claws of reason, eyes of flame, unmasking the players in the shadowed game, where the silence breaks, the hidden shakes. She names the unspoken, the world away. For those who believe, no words are required. For those who do not, none will suffice.
Hopefully you can hear me. I am praying. I want to welcome my Telegram chat. I want to welcome Rumble, Danielle, You Select, Sober Lady, Karen Huber, God bless, and Liberty Leeway. Thank you for being here. Obviously, Zipple.'s here. S. Jones over on Pilled. It looks like it's you and I on Pilled. Glad you're here, though. Thank you. Today, I woke up to a John Durham bombshell on the White House website. We knew that's what he was doing. So I went through that stuff, and I wanted to go through, point out a few things that I've noticed on the website. And for some reason, I'm not showing my, there it is. For some reason, the screen went way low. Hopefully you're seeing it now. There. Everything should be clear as a bell for you. Okay, so I wanted to go through this because there's a number of things I noticed as I went through. He releases not just, there's 3 key memos, which we'll go through each one, but he also released the Mueller report, and he released the Durham report, which are 2 big deals. Because in the Durham report, if you remember, there was a classified segment, 29 pages, that Grassley released in 2025, which we will go through that, and that is this document here. And some of Durham's findings, of course, don't comport with what we know as reality. So I'm going to kind of pull it all together, hopefully. But I'm going to start with something. Before I go there, I want to start with this slide. Remember, we just talked about this the other day, and I want to focus on one particular chain of events. And I have a issue. I have an issue with that slide, but hold on 1 second. I've got to fix it. Picture border. Just bear with me a second. This has been a long morning for me, so please forgive me. Don't you just love this live crap? Okay. I want to focus on 2 people. This is Oleg Deripaska. He's a Russian oligarch, actually from Ukraine, but he's a Russian oligarch. And this is Igor Danchenko, whom Durham actually ultimately did an indictment and a trial, prosecuted him. Of course, Danchenko was relieved because he was completely acquitted. But I want to start with these 2 guys because Charles Dolan, a Clinton operative, fed Danchenko some political gossip. Danchenko whispers it into the ear of Christopher Steele, and on the other side of that, you have Blumenthal and Shearer feeding that information to Halper, who's in the ear of Downer, who's an Australian diplomat. And this starts the whole Papadopoulos cycle. And the purpose of this feed here was to get it through the Five Eye network, to give the political gossip the legitimacy of credible Five Eye intelligence, the legitimacy to predicate an investigation, which it did. Goes all the way through, comes back, and goes and becomes what we know as Russiagate. Reason why I'm pointing that out, and it's real important to understand, because Durham, his scope was limited, and he didn't have access to all of that information. Please remember that as we go through this. Remember, they eventually migrated Stellar Wind and Crossfire Hurricane into the Round River database, which was officially opened in 2020, but they started migrating in 2018. So please keep that in mind. So John Solomon releases FBI secretly opened a probe alleging Trump fired Comey because he was a Russian asset, declassified memos show. And he goes into these memos, which we'll get into. But what's interesting, I don't know if anybody's opened this up, how many caught the Oxford, not Oxford, comma, in the drop? Did anybody open this? I mean, maybe we should start there. Has anybody opened this? I don't know that anybody has. In my chat room, anybody? Did you actually?
I did open it early, but had to leave for an appointment. But I did notice the Oxford, and that's kind of what made my eyebrow go up.
Okay. So, for those that don't know, what is an Oxford, comma, is a misspelling, an Oxford, comma. So when you're writing a sentence and you want to distinguish between things, you use a comma, right? A comma before an and distinguishes or sets apart the rest of the list. So I love my cats, Batman and Superman means that you love your cats plus Batman and Superman. Otherwise, without it, it sounds like your cats are Batman and Superman because you're saying, I love my cats named Batman and Superman. Do you see the difference? So the Oxford comma actually distinguishes a list and it sets it apart. And that's the first thing I noticed is they're using the term Oxford comma. In other words, they're setting it apart from, right? They're distinguishing it. Distinguishing it, think of it this way. Crossfire Hurricane, comma. Crossfire Razor, comma. Crossfire Tycoon, comma. Do you see? Those are three different investigations. And Oxford, comma, sets Oxford, comma, apart from the other investigations. Hopefully that makes sense. Do you guys get that? This is a different investigation. Do you get it?
Yes.
Okay. What's interesting is it was opened the day before Mueller was appointed special counsel and closed right after Mueller turned in his report. Remember that? So that's an interesting thing because I have been saying, and I'm going to go to the Mueller report now. I'm going to show you page 13. I have been highlighting this particular section of the Mueller report for years since Mueller put this out. From its inception, the office recognized, let me get it bigger so you can read it. The office recognized that its investigation could identify foreign intelligence, counterintelligence information relevant to the FBI's broader national security mission. FBI personnel who assisted the office established procedures to identify and convey such information to the FBI. The FBI's counterintelligence division met with the office regularly for most of the office's tenure. For more than the past year, the FBI also embedded personnel at the office who did not work on the special counsel's investigation, but whose purpose was to review the results of the investigation and to send in writing summaries, foreign intelligence and counterintelligence information to the FBI headquarters. I've been saying this for the longest time. There were embeds inside the Mueller special counsel office. Those people were required to adhere to all applicable federal law, blah, 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 blah. An FBI attorney worked on FBI-related matters for the office, such as FBI compliance with all FBI policies and procedures. Are you following what that means? Anybody jump in if you have a sneaking suspicion of what they're talking about here. These are people that are making sure that they're adhering to FBI policy. And they're embedded in the special counsel's office for more than the past year. And this is obviously released in 2019. So at least since 2018, Mueller, if you recall, was appointed in 2017. The day after. No, it's not an infiltration. I think they're investigating the investigators.
Okay, that was my other statement because I do remember extended conversations about that back in the day.
So if I go back to, and I'm going to pull it up, Q report. Let's go over here. Mueller. Okay, so if you go to the Mueller Design 2, 3992. Let me just pull this up in a big way here so you can read it. What's that first line read? Mueller designed to take in evidence needed to expose the deep state, DOJ. Block regarding Mueller evidence ongoing investigation. So if you go back to the Mueller report, embedded personnel, it kind of comes together, doesn't it? And what was interesting is during the whole Mueller thing, everybody would talk about all the rest of this, but they wouldn't talk about line number 1, which was always interesting to me. Kind of forgot that line existed. But if he's designed to take in evidence needed to expose the deep state, then this line in page 13 of volume 1 makes more sense. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
I agree with
Wow.
you, sober lady. I think they are good guys embedded. Say that again, Annie.
Yeah, I was going to say they got the good guys in there to watch over things, and so we had an inside baseball on what was really going on. That was good.
That is my impression. That has been my position ever since the Mueller report came out. This Q post, by the way, is from April of 2020. It goes back further than that, though. This is just one of them, Mueller Design 2. So if you take and look at the Oxford comma, we're setting aside this particular investigation is different from the others. And what was the predicate here? Well, they're saying when they opened it that based on some of the things Trump said, they believe there's some there with regards to the whole idea of Russia collusion. So they reopened, catch the date, 5/16/2017, the day Mueller is appointed. It was publicly announced. 5/16/17. Now remember the Q post. Remember it? Who was in the office of the Oval Office the day before that on 5/16?
Robert Mueller.
With who?
Oh, the guy from the military.
Yeah, General Mattis and Jeff Sessions, right?
I could not remember his name. I could see his face.
So General Mattis, Jeff Sessions, and Mueller met in the Oval Office the day before he was formally announced as special counsel. That's interesting because now we got a predicate here written by Baker, who was the general counsel of the DOJ. He, remember, left DOJ and went to Twitter in 2020. Remember that? So they opened this investigation in 2017, the predicate being things Trump said, so that they could continue the investigation into Trump during his presidency, that as if that's not big enough. Then we get here, we've got the notification. They actually briefed, Andrew McCabe made notification in person to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and it turns out to, it was Rosenstein and I think it was Baker, but Andrew McCabe told Rosenstein, we're opening up this investigation. This verbal briefing serves to comply with notification requirements. So after they've decided to reopen the Russia investigation because of the Mueller report, now you got Mueller, you got 2 investigations going on at the same time, it seems, right? Until you read the embed notice. So who's embedded? Because Rosenstein let it happen, right? Then you come into the closing. Remind you, these are all being declassified on the 30th. Remember when John Solomon said he knows that certain documents exist? They would find them, declassify them so he could put them out. 7:30 is last week. What is it, Wednesday or Thursday, right? 7:30 was last Thursday. So they were declassified last Thursday, and he's putting this out on Tuesday. I would also venture that these are being put out because Joe Geneva no longer needs them. But anyway, in this closing communication, they explain their position, and they're saying they're saying again, On or about May 16th, using predetermined criteria establishing Crossfire Hurricane investigative team, the FBI opened a full investigation based on articulatable factual basis that reasonably indicated that President Trump may be or had been wittingly or unwittingly involved in activities or on behalf of the government of the Russian Federation, which may have constituted violations. The investigator, notice it's singular, meaning they're pointing to Mueller, also sought to determine whether President Trump and others yet to be named obstructed and or conspired to obstruct any associated FBI investigation into Russian efforts to influence the 2016 presidential election. Okay, I'm just going to point out here that when the Durham report finally came out, it was missing some really interesting information, which John Solomon doesn't talk about in here, which I'm going to get into. So they open the investigation. That leads to the 3 documents, and that leads to, well, I'm just going to go ahead. FBI opening a full investigation based on articulatable facts. We told you the goal of the investigation is to determine if President Trump wittingly or unwittingly coordinated. And then the memo written by Counterintelligence Division, approved by then FBI General Counsel Jim Baker, then Assistant Director of Counterintelligence William Priestat, made clear the concerns about Russian influence and obstruction included Comey's firing. So they added Comey to this. Even though they were clear to say that Trump's comments had no input as to whether or not Comey was fired. And this was what, if you go back to the another Q post where they're talking about Rosenstein's not playing the game, no matter what we've got on him. So they added Comey to this predicate, saying that the reason for firing Comey was because of the Russian influence. So the alternative explanation can be reasonably read to imply that the FBI's counterintelligence investigation was a factor in President Trump's decision to terminate Comey. That's from the memo. Okay. So then McCabe and Rosenstein were advised that the probe had been launched. Now remember, Comey's fired. Now McCabe is the head of the FBI, and they're telling, and McCabe is the one who tells Rosenstein, hey, we opened this investigation, and here's what the memos are. So that goes back into the sensitive investigative matter. They kept it behind a firewall. That's a key thing to remember there. And they considered it the least intrusive method to address the serious national security risk posed by the activities alleged. One of the things I will point out in one of their own documents is the entire thing is sourced by news media. So in other words, leaking like crazy, right? The wrap-up smear. Remember that? So he goes into the Mueller report, which I showed you, and then he goes into the Durham report. In the Durham report, what's really interesting, and I'm just going to come down to page 11. Oops. Okay. So here, I move faster than my computer will let me. Look at that. It's not moving. My computer is having troubles. Okay. See if it works now. So coming to, it's not allowing me to scroll through. There it goes. I don't know why I can't scroll through it. So in this document, and it says page 11, but it's not. Durham's talking about a bunch of emails that had been released or captured by Leonard Bernardo. Leonard Bernardo is, let me show you. It's not finding it. How come? Oh, I know why. Because I'm in the wrong document. Leonard Bernardo is a guy that works for Soros. He had, according to the FBI and the Durham report, his emails were hacked by the Russians. The Russians then took those emails and fabricated this long story that they used to show that the Russians were the source of the Russiagate information, that they were putting out this information at the behest of Hillary, to fabricate this story that they were in favor of Trump. But I went through this, and I just want to remind people of a few things. Like I said, I already showed you that it was our own operatives here in this country that were feeding information to the Russians. I already showed you that. Danchenko, and you've got Deripaska. So if you've got this going on, doesn't it make sense that there's more to it than the Russians hacked Leonard Bernardo's emails? Who just happens to work for open societies? It just, something isn't right there. Would you agree?
Just happens.
So they have this great series of emails, and it actually, after a while, gets mocking. Great series of emails that Durham is looking at and saying, after reviewing everything, these appear to be a compilation of various reports that have come out to formulate these emails. And I'm sitting here going, okay, logic. Who remembers the term cozy bear? Anybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Russian, right?
Yep.
So you remember Cozy Bear. You remember the story behind it. This is where Dmitry Alperovich of CrowdStrike in April of 2016 says, yep, Cozy Bear's in here right now, blaming it on the Russians hacking the DNC servers. You remember this, right? If you've watched any of my old shows, you do. So you've got Cozy Bear inside the servers. Let's break this down, because who found it? It's a group called Area 51, which is a part of Open Societies. It's run by a guy named Sean Henry. Where is he? Dmitry Alperovich. Sean Henry runs that. He used to be an FBI individual. So remember, they told the DNC, don't touch that server. We don't want to tip off the Russians. Then they got Sean Henry to take over the server. The FBI actually never took custody of that server. Why? Because Sean Henry is the guy that developed and implemented the cybersecurity division of the FBI. They trusted him. So Sean Henry who's now working for CrowdStrike, running DFR Lab, and they call it Cozy Bear. Well, it's interesting about Cozy Bear because this gets into a Russian story. In July of 2016, the Russians arrest the guy who runs this this hacking group, right? And 2 FSB officers. They were arrested on treason. He was eventually released, but he had to shut down his company. But he went by the name of Humpty Dumpty. The leaks that they use are Cozy Bear. The company he ran is called Sholtai Boltai. He got involved with DFR Labs in Area 51, and he was credited with hacking emails. And then, of course, we get Durham saying, well, those emails were hacked by Russians, right? So what I said to AI is, wait a minute. The very people involved with identifying the Russians set up the Russians. 2 FSB officers then took that information, secretly fed it back to the U.S. Do you see this feedback loop? And you now have this complete loop that takes Sholtai, makes him close down he was a cooperating witness. He closed down his company, and we've got a complete Russian narrative with a Russia connection. Did I make sense with this? Or didn't I?
No, I followed you. I mean, we kind of knew. It's been a while since we talked about it, but you can see the circuitous path they took.
So let me show you something else
Hey,
that was interesting. Before
hey,
you,
Feisty.
just 1 second, Eddie. Let me show you something else that was interesting. On New Year's Eve in New York City, was a massive fire in this multi-dwelling building. The guy who lives there, or lived, just happened to work for CrowdStrike. Just happened to. Warburg Pincus partner Michael Martin and his wife Gina snapped up this apartment. So they were a major funder of CrowdStrike. That apartment got burned down. This is in 2019. And Sholtai is out of business since 2017 when that case was ended in Russia. So I'm just pointing out there's some interesting lapses. So I asked AI, why isn't this in the Durham report? I knew the answer is because Durham's mandate was so narrow that he couldn't look beyond these emails that he's talking about. So go ahead, Eddie.
Okay, so and you're speaking over everything was declassified today, correct?
No, this was most of the stuff other than the 3 original memos. These 3
Well,
memos were declassified today. Everything else has been out there.
Okay, but you're tying in this into what we're looking at today, basically, and expanding on it, right?
I'm just saying this is not in the Durham report.
Right.
And the reason why it's
Okay.
not in the Durham report is because his mandate was too narrow. In fact, I actually have that. Here's his mandate. This is the memorandum here that sets up the Mueller report. Or sets up Durham.
Everything's like a boomerang.
Yeah, I have been saying for years, I think parts of Crossfire Hurricane, the Mueller report, were actually a sting operation. By the time Durham came along, his mandate was to look into Russia collusion, but he wasn't given full laterability. It was a very narrow investigation into domestic. So he didn't look into the Russia piece of it or any of the foreign intel that they had. Am I making sense?
Yeah, it's like they give him the parameters that they can look at that also tethers them to not going any further outside when they find stuff.
Which is why Danchenko was never taken any further. Durham indicted him. There was a trial, but Danchenko was acquitted. I've been saying that the Sussman and Danchenko indictments were more to highlight a system or a machine than it was about those individuals, especially once you read their indictments. But the Durham report, the classified appendix that Grassley released last July, a year ago July, is pointing to things that I know are missing, which is why I showed you the Sholtai-Boltai stuff.
So they're kind of putting an indirect spotlight on things.
No kidding, right?
Yeah.
You see it though, right?
Yes.
If you've been following along, and I know a lot of people don't get the CrowdStrike Cozy Bear thing. I get that. I do, because I dug into it heavily back in the day. What's interesting about Dmitry Alperovich is he actually started his company on a marketing ploy. There was another virus he claimed called Shady Rat that he blamed on China. And then he got a favorable Washington Post bimbo to write a favorable article about him finding Shady Rat, and he launches CrowdStrike, to which Warburg Pincus is a major funder whose house burns down in 2019 after the Mueller report comes out. So I'm looking at all this going, well, the whole thing about Cozy Bear, which he also called a virus, is not true. It can't be true. In fact, white hat hackers were laughing because you could not see somebody inside a server unless you were standing over their shoulders and watched them get into it. So the whole thing from Dmitry Alperovich was always BS from the beginning. So the fact that they're saying that that's who the Russians were, the ones that hacked the DNC emails, was always a ploy. But then you get into the fact that Durham is saying that this string of emails is generated by Russia to sow political discourse in this country. Then you got to back up again, because if you recall, under Mueller, they indicted this Russian influence firm. And then when the Mueller report came out, they had to drop the case against them because what was in the Mueller report didn't match their indictment. So it was always a ruse. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And so I'm reading through this, and they keep going back to the Bernardo emails. Bernardo, like I said, his boss, George Soros. He was a vice president or a senior vice president of Open Society Foundation for Eastern Europe. And they're claiming his emails were hacked. And then they took all this information and fabricated this string of emails using open source information. Well, what's funny is if you take this to the next step, this is 59 pages. That's not the right one.
It's always the fruit of the poisonous tree.
Right. I'm trying to find. No, let's go to the 59 page. There's a list, and I'm trying to find it. Here it is. So this list, if you notice, this document's 94 pages long. It's a timeline of everything to do with the Russia investigation. Okay? Everything. But if you come down, it's 94 pages. Watch, it's just a table of all the entries. Notice where it changes. You see that? This is all the source material. A lot of redactions, but see the source material? Remember when Sessions kept talking about all the leaks? These are all news reports. Every single one of these coming from page 73 through 94, almost 20 pages of source material highlighting news reports. Isn't that a little curious to you? That's a wrap-up smear.
That's outrageous.
That's a wrap-up smear right there.
That's outrageous.
And all of these reports led to, one way or another, these chart entries, table entries. So they're going through here, and you see they're let me make it bigger. See, they're annotated. So this goes to news report number 3, which is listed at the end. But the Russian regime has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting Trump for at least 5 years. Political gossip. Part of the predication for a Trump-Russia investigation. Do you see where I'm going? So far, Trump has declined various sweetener real estate business deals offered him in Russia in order to further the Kremlin's cultivation of him. Because that makes sense. Again, this goes to news report number 6. You see that? So they're literally feeding information to the media, turning it around and using it as part of the predication for an investigation. Notice the dates. We start this as early as September of 2016. You see this? I mean, you can't deny that there's an inside job going on here. Don't you see it?
Oh my, it's awful.
It almost looks like evidence.
Yeah, it does. Doesn't it? That's my point. Joe Judenova doesn't need these. This is what he actually released, are these 3 memos. He doesn't need them. It's going different. It's going deeper.
Do you think they're going after the media?
Do I think they're going after who?
The media.
Oh yeah, I think the media is going to be in a part of the takedown. I have no doubt. There's collusion here.
Isn't this documentation part of what they use for the FISA?
Yes.
start open up okay.
Yes, this opened
All
up
these
all the
rumors.
investigations. Yes. So, like I said, when you look at the date, this starts in June 20th of 2016 through 9/19/2016. It's using a news report. That's why I was showing you. If you come down, it's all table until you get to the page 74. I'll just pick any page here. Look at this. DW.com. Putin denies plans to influence U.S. elections. 16 October 2016. Website. PolitiFact. They use a lot of PolitiFact, by the way. Hillary Clinton flip-flops on Trans-Pacific Partnership. The Truthometer. Remember PolitiFact's Truthometer?
Yeah.
So how do you use PolitiFact as a reason to predicate an investigation? Do you see where I'm going?
You plant the information in
No
there.
kidding. WikiLeaks. TPP Treaty, that's Trans-Pacific Partnership Treaty, Intellectual Property Rights Chapter, Consolidated Text, from October 5th of 2015 to October 9th, 2015. And it's got the WikiLeaks link, date. Source is a leaker site likely used as a propaganda tool by the Kremlin to leak real altered classified documents. That wasn't WikiLeaks. Do you see? And what they're saying is they're telling Durham, no, these files were manipulated by Russia, and they're sitting here now. On one hand, they say yes, on the other hand, they say no. And Durham's declassified part of that report, which was a part of the drop today by John Solomon, was actually declassified by Grassley back in July of 2025, is saying that Russia is using open source information and fabricating emails from Leonard Bernardo and what they're doing is saying that Russia is trying to create chaos and division. But when you read this set of emails, it very closely mirrors the spy op that I've been telling you about, that picture that I showed you just the other day. It's all this in those emails. So you can't tell me that this is a Russia thing. What they're doing is they're backing into a Russia story. Does that make sense to you?
It's an American thing.
Yeah. And they used the Five Eye Network. I'm sorry, Annie, I can't hear you. You're roboting. They used the Five Eye Network, and they used likely in this one, they obviously used Open Society, right? The Bernardo stuff, but they used this network to make a Russia connection, even though there wasn't one, and then blame it on Russia. Not that CrowdStrike hasn't had a history of doing that. Remember, Shady Rat was the Chinese, and Cozy Bear was the Russians, neither of which is true. But he was able to leave McAfee, start his own company, and make a lot of money. Are you getting the gist there, that personal, grift? Anybody got any thoughts so far?
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it is.
Gives you an idea what's in that R&R server as well.
Yeah. So
in fact, I'm wondering if some of this doesn't come from that.
Bernardo is saying when he met with Durham, he was saying that, I don't know these emails. I don't know what you're talking about. And so they did their own investigation and they were fabricated. And it's in the Durham report, in this unredacted or lesser redacted, I should say. This was the original piece of the Durham report that was not released, that it was kept under seal, and then Grassley released it a year ago. So we're looking at something much deeper. Hopefully you guys can see this. Are you seeing it?
You laid it out really well, Feisty. You explained it really
Okay.
well.
I'm not saying McAfee was a part of it, Karen. Before he started CrowdStrike, Alperovich was at McAfee. When he did the Shady Rat piece, he was able to, because he got a bimbo at the Washington Post. Each time he used the same bimbo, so there's your hint. He got a bimbo at the Washington Post to print favorable stuff about him, and he left McAfee and started CrowdStrike.
Well, didn't the guy that was the founder of McAfee, didn't he they insinuated he went all crazy and everything?
Yeah,
Isn't he the one buried
That's-
himself in the sand to hide?
John McAfee.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said he went crazy. He committed suicide. Yeah, there's all kinds of stories. We don't know the full truth. We do know that he was brought back to the U.S. by the U.S. authorities.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, how come all these people that may have something to tell are eliminated or disappeared or dead?
Dead
What
men
a
don't
great
talk.
question. Oh my gosh. It's a one seedy connection.
They all come back to the same thing. So I'm looking through, and we got that part of it. You've got the predicate for the Mueller report, May 9th, 2017. So let me go backwards a little bit. When Trump did win the election, it was a shock. Because everything they tried to do up into the election was designed to reduce his popularity, and yet he still got across the finish line. And they thought they could steal the election. But if you recall, in 2016, I know I was a part of it. I mentioned it in my own chat this morning. If you recall, in 2016, they deployed aggressive battleground poll watching policies, practices, operations. In fact, I was a part of, on the East Coast, a communications team where somebody just called in, hey, I'm seeing something here. And because of our network, the phonathon thing, we were able to get law enforcement to that precinct within an hour, and 2 people were detained. They were in the back room doing something funky with the machines. And they got spotted by one of the poll watchers. So it was a very effective grassroots effort that relied on grassroots effort to protect the battleground states. And if you go back and think about it, by the time the media started reporting that by the time they got to about the 3rd battleground state that Trump won, you started seeing the faces of the personalities in the media turn from jubilee, Clinton was going to win, to, oh my God, she may not, to damn near tears because Trump was winning. It was classic to watch it happen. So here, what they did after that, because they had already been illegally investigating Trump, now they got a problem because everything they did before the election, because it was illegal. Remember, they tried to get a FISA against Trump in June of 2016, and the FISC uncustomarily declined it. But then the FISC did allow the Carter Page FISA. That's why I keep saying the Carter Page FISA isn't what people think it is. Okay, it wasn't. I think that too was a sign of a sting operation. Nevertheless, they have fruit of the poisonous tree. The best way to turn that into a productive, actionable piece of intelligence is to open up a special counsel. And that's where it's funny. Be careful what you ask for, because I'm pretty sure I am reading the tea leaves that this is clear to me. They knew it was BS. And those that were getting captured in the crosshairs weren't the usual people. Right? So there were things said in these reports, things that said that highlight it, right? Strzok himself had texted Lisa Page and said, this case was separated. Wait a minute. No big there. Remember, Peter Strzok said that. And that was only 3 days after opening the Mueller report, the Mueller case. He texted her admitting his gut sense that the allegations against Trump lacked any kind of substance. And then you've got Special Agent William Barnett. He told DOJ investigators in a deposition that the team joked that the probe was like a bad version of the board game Clue, where they could just pair any random character with any activity and call it collusion. He also said that there was a lot of tension between the agents and the prosecutors on Special Counsel Mueller's team. He felt that the prosecution team was driving towards a predetermined outcome rather than following anything objective, any evidence that was objective. So he noted that the Mueller prosecution team they were looking for a crime, which we know this to be true. And then I already told you about the Oxford comma. That's an odd name. That, first of all, they misspelled it, but Oxford comma is an investigation that's set aside from other investigations. You saw how I showed you that, right? So they didn't have anything really actionable against Trump. They tried to back into it with the Mueller investigation. It is my belief that the special counsel and the Carter Page FISA, the FISA allowed for the special counsel's office, they could see who was using that FISA process, right? The 702 database. And as a matter of fact, they were using it widely. But so you look at, if they know that there's BS, people within the government know it's BS, then what is going on here? What you're looking at, I believe, is not Russia, but a concerted effort by people high up in government from Brennan down. I'm going to go with that because it's interesting what Brennan was doing. I don't know if Brennan is demonstrably involved, but he does have some interesting notes, right? So we've got all of that pointing to the same thing. Now, the one thing that I've been showing people for years is a neat article. See if it comes up. You see the title of the article? Avenging Angel that takes on the FBI.
That's Durham.
Yep. It's now behind a paywall, damn it. Let's see if I can pull it up.
But I thought Mueller was a straight shooter. That he was the honest one in the group to keep the whole group for the special counsel.
Okay, so Mueller wasn't the investigator. Right. You know that, right?
Right, but he was heading up that whole thing, right?
He headed up the office, but the lead investigator is Weissman.
Okay, all right.
Did you remember that?
Not until you just reminded me.
Yeah. So on November 5th, 2017, we have this neat post by Q, and that's the St. Michael sword, right? And he gives us the St. Michael prayer is mentioned in it. It's November 5th, 2017. When I was doing research, I found this old article. They updated it September 2nd of 21. However, I'm going to point out the original article was from 2001. It's interesting what they're doing here. But Durham, and this goes back to all of the mob trials. Durham was investigating the FBI because they had been leaking to targets about impending raids by the FBI, and the mob was getting away with it. So Durham has taken on this activity to go after these people within the FBI, and they called him the Avenging Angel. And I've been saying for years, Q post 109 is actually announcing Durham. It wasn't, although it's a worthy prayer, it's an exorcism prayer, but it wasn't about St. Michael. It was about John Durham. And so this article talks all about that, tells you all about what he was doing to take on the FBI. That's interesting because we didn't know until 2019 that Jeff Sessions actually appointed Durham to his investigation. Mind you, Mueller started in May. Durham is officially brought on October 28th, 2017. Does that date sound familiar? Anybody?
Just a little.
What's that date?
Here's first Q drop.
Yep, first Q drop, which is responding to a post. It was dropped at 4:44, meaning the whole world. Responding to a post at 3:33, which means divine perfection. So I'm just telling you, they knew they were winning by the time this all started. What are your thoughts now? That's why I wanted to bring this up.
That's a beautiful thing. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. So in going through these websites, because I did pull up a few of them, and notice there's a lot of, and I think this is actual pointing to directly leaked information. Remember, Sessions had a big deal. Thank you, S. Jones, for the shades. I'm so thankful for that. Looking at this and all these redactions in these news articles tells me that these are a subject of a bigger investigation. If you come back, these are the Brennan notes, right? Where they're looking to go after Flynn. And this particular one, this set of notes points to an article Ignatius wrote, right? Article Ignatius, and remember, Ignatius is one of their leakers. On January 12th, 2017, it's about going after Trump because of Flynn. And something is rotten in the State Department, right? When he talks about, did Trump's campaign encourage Russia alleged hacking to hurt his rival Hillary Clinton and help him? Remember, this is the predicate for opening up. And they said, wittingly or unwittingly, because of his own rhetoric, that Russia hacked those emails of Leonard Bernardo. Remember? And so Ignatius, wrap-up smear, puts out an article on the 12th, and this begins the predicate to go after Trump after he's elected. First thing they had on their to-do list, get rid of Flynn. He knows where the body's buried. Get him out of here. They did. Flynn didn't get fired till early February, but this is the beginning of all of that. And then he asked another question. Where's the other question? Question 3. Let me find question 2 again. I lost it. Why did the Obama administration wait so long to deal with the Russian apparent hacking? This is the Hamlet puzzle in our drama. Like the Prince of Denmark, President Obama delayed taking action even as evidence mounted of dastardly deeds. Okay, this is what you call cleaning up the crumbs, right? Because they knew supposedly that Russia was hacking emails as far back as 2016. Yet, 15 rather, and they didn't do anything about kicking out the Russians till after the election in 2016. So why did he take so long? We got to clean that crumb up. That's cleaning up the crumbs there. And then question 3. What discussions has the Trump team had with the Russian officials? That gets right into Flynn with Kislyak, right? Which he was doing his job. It's part of transition. Trump said Wednesday that his relationship with Putin is an asset, not a liability. Fair enough. But until he's president, Trump needs to let Obama manage U.S.-Russian foreign policy. Okay, so let me just point out something that's setting a narrative that is not factual. We're officially within the transition period. To have the transition team officially connecting with and talking with their counterparts for once the transition happens is perfectly legal. They tried to paint it as a Logan Act violation. It never was, because it can't be a Logan Act violation when you're officially in transition. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm sorry, I'm coughing. So Ignatius gives you the predicate to go after Flynn and Trump. Do you catch the nuance there? Based on what Brennan says in his document here. That's why Brennan comes into the story. Anybody have any thoughts?
You know, it's hard for me to remember back then because I never paid a lot of attention to this when it was ongoing, thinking how stupid that you would think a president's a Russian spy. I mean, I found that so incredulous that anybody that would believe it had to be a knucklehead. So I never paid a lot of attention to it, but it's astounding how that's all they had and they built this case. It's mind-boggling to me that people bought this.
Yeah, they did. Well, the main reason why people bought it is we were saturated with the media. Right? Every media outlet out there was talking about it. So you got saturated.
They were pushing the hate.
Yes.
Hate Trump, Orange man bad, Orange man bad. They pushed it so hard.
Yeah, they did. They pushed it very hard. And that's my point here, is because Trump really was an existential threat to the status quo in DC. He had said it on the campaign trail, put their antennas up. We have to get Trump. Why? Remember what Trump said. Our movement, remember, is designed to do what? Give us back power. And he went through the whole thing. Maybe I should play that video again, because when you put it all together, that video is the existential threat to the deep state.
That is my favorite video of all time.
Right?
He's the outsider and he was the threat. And that mentality is he has no right to be up there in that position because he's not one of us.
Core cousin, thank you for the cookie. They tried to paint Trump as not qualified to be president because he had no political experience. He was not a DC circleite, right? He did not belong in the DC family, if you will.
Yeah, he wasn't part of the hierarchy.
Right. But they were really concerned. Let me go look it up. Now's a good time.
He was going to open the closet door and all those skeletons were going to fall out.
You're right. He was poking him in the eye. And at the time, I didn't catch that either, but he was. You're right.
Yeah.
Could you hear that okay, everybody, before I go any further?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself while we do this so we can watch this video. I think this is a fabulous video. Okay, sober lady's saying she can't hear the video. How come you could hear it before, can't hear it now? Let me figure this out. Why is it not playing? Okay. No, it was me trying to figure out the audio. I don't know how to fix it. So I'm looking at the monitor. Got a global. I don't know how to fix it. Doesn't let me do this for very long. It's making a lot of noise. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know that I can. I did. Is that better? No, it's not playing in the YouTube. Oh, they hear it now. They hear it now. Okay. Okay, so it's not playing on the. Let me get the properties again. Capture audio, send. I got everything. Okay, this. See, it's not showing as.
Is it on?
Washington establishment
There it goes.
and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, people that don't have your good in mind, our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another 4-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever is necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented, and the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefit of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family, instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks. Who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
Oh, I've been talking away and I have no voice. Okay. So for whatever reason, my computer has frozen. My Chrome has frozen. So I can't show my screen just yet. I'm waiting for it to come back. I can't seem to do it. I'm going to try to bring it back up. Oh, it's saying it can't even operate it. Okay. Let me see if I can bring it back up. I just lost my entire thing. Anyway, I'm just going to wing it to the best of my ability. I'm going to start with my famous graphic that I've been showing you because now that gives me the ability to at least have something for you to look at. When you look at what's going on, this entire story, and you see that the Durham report is painting Russia as fabricating the emails that establish the predicate that the FBI used, and you recognize that Dolan fed unverified gossip to Danchenko, which ended up becoming verified through a Five Eye network to give it legitimacy so they can open an investigation. I have a hard time believing Russia actually hacked. And like I showed you with the Sultai Boltai, there's a lot of interesting pieces that most people didn't talk about, and that gets back to this whole CrowdStrike story. Remember CrowdStrike, Dmitry Alperovich, is the guy that talked about how it was Cozy Bear, which was Russian, that had infiltrated the DNC servers. I'm looking at all of this going, okay, something's not making sense here. None of it makes sense. And if none of it makes sense, then you're being fed garbage. Something has to connect. You have to have a story. And that story isn't coming up in any of the formal reports that we've been talking about. And so I started down this path back in 2018 going, this isn't coming together. And then when I read the Durham report, which I showed you, learning about the embeds, I had always been saying, I think, not the Durham, the Mueller report, I had always thought about Mueller as being a sting operation, as well as the Carter Page FISA being a sting operation, because the thing that was interesting, they got Carter Page FISA back in October of 2016, but they didn't stop putting out those, renewing those FISAs until right after Mueller finished his report. So I always saw that as a way to watch who was going into the 702. If you take that and you continue that through the story and you realize that Cozy Bear was the name of a Russian, company. This is out of Euromaidan. The Sultai Boltai. It was one of their nicknames. He went by Humpty Dumpty. The entire thing was, they had all their nicknames were out of Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, which was always interesting because Q used that as a title for quite a while. But he created Humpty Dumpty, which created, supposedly that was Cozy Bear. Right after the story came out about the emails being hacked, Russia arrests this guy and 2 FSB people for charges of treason, which is really interesting because when you look at those charges, he was acquitted and the other 2 FSB agents were not. So what it turns out is those fabricated emails were actually fed back to the Clinton campaign, and it just created this feedback loop that allowed for a story to be narrated. And so how do you then take it to and I'm trying to find my live stream again. How do you then take it to a position of of fabrication by the Russians, when in fact you have a different story being generated. And so I'm looking at the Durham stuff, and I can't pull it up now. I just lost it all. Let me see if I can get my history to pull it back, all of it back up. This is so frustrating when this happens. Let me see. Restore the window. Okay, so coming back, how do you come back to the Durham report saying that those emails were stolen from Leonard Bernardo, who worked for Open Societies, and you recognize that these guys are Open Society, Dmitry Alperovich. He ran DFR Lab, which was run by Sean Henry, of all people, right? Where is it? Sean Henry, CrowdStrike alumni. These are the hackers. And I got the wrong map up. I can't find my slide. Of course. Now my whole story is getting all whacked out. The one thing that we did notice, like I said, Warburg Pincus had gotten this apartment in New York City right after the Durham report, and this is New Year's Eve 2019, right after the Mueller report. It catches on fire. Turns out Warburg Pincus was a major funder of CrowdStrike. Well, I always found that to be very interesting, considering that Sholtai Boltai was actually exonerated, but the two FSB officers were not. So, you've got too many stories converging. And what's interesting about what Solomon put out this morning is it only goes part of the way. And if you look at everything that Joe DeGeneva is doing in Florida, what I saw in today's stuff, if you will, is stuff we already knew. Other than, and I showed you that, other than the name for the investigation called, what are they, Oxford, comma, and I had showed you what an Oxford comma is, Oxford, F-O-R-D, and that's where you distinguish things in a list, right? And so the Oxford comma, spelled improperly, was actually separating it from these other investigations. And so I think we're leading into a bigger story that's about to drop. I hope I'm making sense. Am I? Somebody give me some feedback, because was trying to get my windows back. There's my Oxford comma.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Hey,
Yes,
Feisty.
you're making sense.
Yes, you are. Mm-hmm.
As always.
Yeah, I think we're absolutely going. There's some indictments coming very, very shortly.
Say that again, Eddie.
I said absolutely. I think there's indictments coming very shortly.
Yeah,
right
and
around the
it's
corner.
deeper than the story that we've known. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree.
Especially when you look at
It's a good news.
I hope it's really deep.
these files aren't opening. Let me go back here. The three memos that were released that Joe DeGeneva had talked about, it was the opening of the investigation in January of 2017, using the predicate of these hacked emails and things that Trump was saying. They were trying to pin the Russia disinformation to Trump. But as I dig into the, quote, Russia disinformation, what I see is not Russia disinformation, but a feedback loop. That feedback loop being, we've got to pin this on Trump now, which is what started the whole process, if you will. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I got one to start with. There was the one Q drop where it showed like the marquee of the movie showing in DC, and one of them was what was it? Something Panic, Panic in DC?
Panic in DC. Panic in DC, because I'm telling you, and I keep telling people, please step back from the names you know. Entrenched and fortified are not people you would generally know their names. I want to point out something with the Sean Henry was actually deposed. And, okay, so in the deposition with Sean Henry, this deposition, by the way, if you look, is from December of 2017. So it's important to know that. I use the term exfiltrated because what he says, what Sean Henry says, is that they had no proof that the Russians exfiltrated those emails. They had none. Yet, if you go back to the reports, where am I? They're not coming up. Page 11, they're talking about this. This is supposedly Bernardo's emails that were hacked, and a fabricated story was developed by the Russians, and then the two FSB officers, which you don't know about that until you understand what happened in Russia in October of 16. But the two FSB officers covertly sent it back to Clinton's political operatives. So if this is true, then this can't be true, that they have no evidence that there was an exfiltration, right? You can't have both. And he says it 17 times that they had no proof, right? Counsel just reminded me that as it relates to the DNC, we have indicators the data was exfiltrated. Okay, Mr. Henry, he actually says, and it's Schiff trying to get him to say that. Yes, sir. So that again, stage 4, which I mean, there's not the analysis, but there are indicators that it happened. There are times when we can see data exfiltrated and we can see it conclusively. But in this case, it appears it was set up to be exfiltrated. We just don't have the evidence that says it actually left. That's a word salad to say we have no proof that those emails were exfiltrated from the DNC server. Right? And he doubles down on it. He talks about it some more. Okay. And you were able to tell the amount of data that was exfiltrated. In that particular case, meaning the DNC server, we were able to identify, based on some of the indicators that we saw, that there was data that was exfiltrated from the network. He doesn't know who. Coming back down. And so the body of stuff that was prepped to be stolen, you can't unequivocally say it was or was not exfiltrated out of the DNC. So it was prepped to be stolen. Okay. Oops, went up one. And here he says, you said something and I want to restate it and tell me if I'm wrong. If I could, you said, I believe, talking about the DNC computer, you had indications the data was prepped to be exfiltrated, but no evidence it actually left. His answer? Yes. So they set it up to be stolen. Are you catching this? So then they turn around and say, well, the Russians hacked Leonard Bernardo's emails. Leonard Bernardo just happens to be a Soros senior vice president for the Eastern European division, right? Russia. And that the Russians somehow took all these emails and crafted this report that I was going through earlier. Wait a minute, where is it? These emails, these are emails that are in the Durham report. Where did this come from? This is the part of the Durham report that was kept classified. Because it was kept classified, we didn't get this information until July of last year. I've been through this report so many times, 29 pages, kept behind the scenes. And they're talking about, and it's heavily redacted, by the way, as you can see, these at the beginning of a sentence, these are classifications being redacted because it's now declassified. But when you get into things like this, these are redactions of information, right? And they're talking about these emails that were supposedly hacked from Leonard Bernardo, and then the Russians crafted this series of emails that laid out that Trump laid out the predicate that became the Trump-Russia investigation later on after the election. I hope you guys are following me, because these are all coming out much later. And so, like I said, if you've got Sean Henry, who's ahead of the DFR Labs, Area 51, if you've got Sean Henry saying we don't even have proof that these emails that were set to be exfiltrated, they were set up to be exfiltrated. Let me give you the rest of the story. This goes back to April of 2016, where the firewall between the Clinton campaign and the Bernie Sanders campaign was removed. And this is where Sean Henry comes. Seth Rich comes in. Seth Rich supposedly saw what was behind that firewall. He supposedly, although that nobody's ever confirmed it, exfiltrated all those emails and gave it to WikiLeaks. That's the assumption that everybody's been going by, based on Julian Assange, who said that it was a young person that gave him the information. It wasn't the Russians. Okay. So we now come to this period where they're actually admitting that there was a block of emails that was prepped to be exfiltrated. They have no proof that it was. But that still became the predicate for opening up the Mueller report in 2017. I hope I'm making sense. Am I?
It's absolute perfect sense for me. I'm following perfectly. Yes.
Okay. So the reason why I'm bringing this out is this report that John Solomon put up on the White House site today with this misspelled Oxford comma tells me that this is a part of a bigger investigation, right? It's set apart from, that's what an Oxford comma does, is it defines a list, right? It segregates things in a list. It's the comma before an and in a list. So think of it: Crossfire Hurricane, Crossfire Razor, Crossfire Tycoon. Go down that list, right? And then you go comma and Oxford comma. So this is intentionally being set aside, spelled wrong, being set aside as a separate and totally different type of investigation. That's my opinion based on what they did here.
Now, why did they spell it wrong?
It couldn't be found if it's spelled wrong.
For the obfuscate? Or
yeah, how do you hide it inside of a secure database? They did it with Comey, right, Corny?
Right. That's right.
So that's the assumption I'm making. That's the only assumption I can make. I mean, that's such an obvious misspelling, don't you think?
And I seen you post on the board earlier, and you were talking about that, and I kind of got the hint that you were leading that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that, because we've seen them do it in the past, right? That's a common theme that they've been doing.
Right.
I just posted in your chat what Jeffrey Clark had said, and he agrees with that assessment. But he also talks about Comey being known as someone who likes Oxford commas. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. Additionally, let me speculate that James Comey was well known by his associates as liking Oxford commas. I'm hyper pronouncing Oxford because the investigation is Oxford. Okay. So they named the operation clearly motivated by revenge in response to Trump firing Comey. So remember, Comey's already gone when this all starts up. They added the fact because they were angry that Comey had gotten fired. But if you go back and go through the predicate for firing Comey, there's something different going on, and it wasn't Trump who was really the one to fire him. Is actually Rosenstein. And so you're looking at a totally different pathway here. So, but that doesn't explain why it was deliberately misspelled as Oxford. I'm going to go ahead and guess that they did that to deliberately frustrate FOIA requests, which it would. If anyone in the outside world happened to hear about what they thought was Operation Oxford, comma, and go do a search of the documents, they weren't going to find them. That's my assumption. And Katie, thank you for finding that, because I totally 100% agree that they opened up this investigation as different and distinct from. So who opened these investigations? My documents aren't coming up, but the person who opened up these investigations is also interesting. The predicate was approved by none other than James Baker, who left DOJ. He was a general counsel, went to Twitter in 2020, and James Priestap. But you've got people inside the FBI were all arguing that there was a lot of frustration. They felt that the Mueller team was following a bias, that they were solely focused on getting Trump, not so much in following verifiable or vetted information. So it changes the whole story. Anybody have any thoughts? Katie, thank you so much for that.
On the hack for the DNC server, they did not let the FBI do the research. Their cyber security team do the research to find out who hacked it. Didn't they let crowdsource?
Yeah, do you know why?
Because they didn't want the truth to come out.
Actually, it's actually something more simple than that. A lot more simple. Who is the head of DFR Labs? His name is Sean Henry. Wait a minute. I have the wrong slide up. Sorry about that. His name is Sean Henry. Sean Henry, former FBI official who established the cyber division within the FBI. So when Dmitry Alperovich says, hey, we've got Sean Henry here, don't worry about it, they're like, oh, we know him, we trust him. Get it? They were able to keep it in their ecosphere.
Keep it in their own corrupt purview.
CrowdStrike kept it, yes. Because they had Sean Henry. The FBI knew Sean Henry. The FBI trusted Sean Henry. Sean Henry is part of DFR Labs. He's the person that was actually running it.
Entrenched and fortified again.
Yes. But at this point, he's no longer with the FBI. Are you getting it?
I feel you.
That's what makes this story so intriguing. Because you're looking at several players in a behind-the-scenes conspiracy.
Can we go back to Trump's speech, the snippet of the speech that you played a while ago?
You want to replay it?
For just a minute? No.
Go ahead.
Just discuss it.
Go ahead.
When he starts out, he says, "We the people."
Yeah.
Our Constitution says, "We the people."
Mm-hmm.
It's the people that this was built for, not the
fortified and entrenched.
Fortified,
right?
Yeah, and not the corrupt. And in what he says in that speech, that he said that was 2016, correct?
Yes, during the campaign.
That's taken us from 2016 to 2026 to actually start seeing what he's saying about the deep entrenched and the global corruption that's worth trillions of dollars.
So you remember when Ratcliffe said the conspiracy keeps continuing? Right? What they did, and remember I showed Jet in the politicization deck that I did a couple weeks ago? What they did is they took all the Stellar Wind information they had collected, took all the Crossfire information they had collected, they walled it off in Round River. And so investigators who were legitimately doing investigations had no access to that data because it was kept very close to the vest and only those in that ecosphere had access to it. So people like Durham trying to do an investigation didn't have access to all this data. We showed that with the Round River deck, remember?
Yes.
So it's when you're continually frustrating legitimate investigations, it's a conspiracy. And so now Durham's report is out there. Grassley just happens to release the what was the classified section, the 29 pages, a year ago. Think about what that means. A year ago means there's investigations going on. And now you've got 3 memos that are released by John Solomon that Joe Geneva actually declassified. I think we're coming to the top of an even bigger investigation than we imagined back in 2019 and 20. Does that make sense to you? Because remember, it turned into a Get Trump series of indictments that would have had him in jail for almost 200 years.
Yes, and I guess, well, not I guess, it's listening back to that speech and then being able to realize all the parts and pieces and how much information, just in that snippet that you played, how much information he was putting out to people.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, myself included, didn't realize all of that. I knew there was something different about it because when he says this is happening to turn our country back to we the people.
Right.
We the people. So that's telling me that there's things in motion, at least at the time, that's going to make it so me as the average citizen will be able to live easier, and this corruption and everything that's been going on is going to stop at some point. Just a lot of us wished it would have happened quicker.
Okay, so I'm just going to point out something to what you're saying because I can appreciate we all thought it was going to happen a lot sooner. So I can appreciate the sentiment that, this has gone on too long. But at the same time, with things that are coming out now, I also appreciate the fact that they did a slow and steady, close reveal, because in the course of taking their time doing this, they've gotten other corrupt individuals for other crimes. Right? You've got, look at the Cuba report. We've got people that have been committing treason and working at the behest of Cuba. Not stuff that we fully knew about. Do you see where I'm going? You're taking down a ring inside the most senior levels of our government. It's more than the Russia campaign. And then you add to it the whole COVID narrative, how they weaponized COVID to win an election. So I can appreciate it taking as long as it has because of that. We're getting the entire piece of it. It's like this cancer with all the tentacles, the pieces that come off. They're actually pulling in those legs of that cancerous cell. And I can appreciate that as I look at it now.
A lot of people wouldn't have been able to understand it if it all hit at once.
Right. I agree with that too. A lot of people, because we've had pieces of it over all these years. But I can tell you when we're even in our own chat room talking about all of this, for most people, it is hard to wrap your brain around the size and scope of what we're looking at. For a lot of people, it's a lot to take in. Which is why I'm constantly talking about the 3 sides of the triangle, understanding it and understanding how to put the news in the proper bucket so you can kind of get a sense of the size and scope of the whole ecosystem.
And as much as we've been able to grasp, and a lot of it's with your help too, that there's still stuff coming out that even us in the chat room are still surprised about.
Yeah.
The depth of it.
Well, yeah, this is huge. I mean, the fact that our government, and remember, Trump was never the target. That's the other thing that's confounding. He was never the target. We were the target. He stepped in and took the slings and arrows. But they were always targeting the American people. We were being slow rolled into communism. Trump comes in and just screws up their whole plan. So they had to reshift, right? They had to shift focus onto Trump, but it wasn't working, which is why they had to steal the 2020 so badly.
Well, and it's like I asked earlier with that Shri post,
Hmm.
and I'm looking at him, and this guy doesn't have a grasp of the English, a very good grasp of English language, but yet he's sitting in there and he's help making laws, and maybe not, maybe he was just there to be a disruptor, but at the same point, it kind of crossed my mind. Did a bunch of these people get installed to be the placeholders until they could insert more radical?
Right.
Because that seems to be what's happening with the elections currently going on, is the people that we thought were radical are nearly as radical as what's going in.
We also understand that Trump has said that they want to do this by the law, do this
By the book.
by the book,
Right.
and that um, if Trump would allow them to come in and just grab a bunch of people up and say, "Oh, okay, you're guilty," and it would have been just the top layer, just the easy pickings, the low hanging fruit, and said, "Okay, that's it. We got all the corruption done." A lot of people would have said, "What?" But a lot of people would have been happy because that's all they would have seen. Okay, we got convictions. All right, great, we're done. But they're going after the deep-seated people, and the roaches, the cockroaches, have been hiding in the dark.
Yeah. But you throw your disposable under the bus and protect yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's always a scapegoat. You're the scapegoat. I told you I'm going to protect you up to the point that my ass is in trouble. And now, oh, sorry, I'm kicking you out of the tent.
They did it all the time.
We're just
Well,
able to see
I've
it
seen
better.
it in the construction that I do. When somebody does something wrong, the first thing they do is throw the unknowingly guy to the wolves and say, "There it is. Well, we fired him, and so our problem is resolved." But the problem is more deep rooted than that. It's rooted in the morals and how the company runs their business. But that gets them by for another few months or a few years because they fired some of these people. So I get that. I get that game on a different level. But this level, that it's so infuriating.
Well, it should be infuriating. It should be. One of the things that people keep forgetting is if you're wrapped up in a nefarious attack, it becomes a cover-up of a cover-up of a cover-up of a cover-up. And each layer we've seen as independent stories, but they're actually a continuation of a previous story. And what ends up happening when you continue to make these cover-ups is you leave goof crumbs all through the plan, right? Like I said, look how they wrapped in. It was a crumb they had to make sure of when they talk about Comey being fired. It was a crumb. They had to justify the Comey firing. They had to talk about it. So you just they're constantly going, oops, we forgot to include this, and then the cover-ups start to get messy. This is what I think Q meant by these people are really stupid, because they were so wrapped up in the here and now and covering up what they were doing that they were forgetting things they left unattended in previous efforts. And hopefully that's making sense.
Can you imagine the war room with them trying to game this out and trying to keep control and trying to stay ahead, and they're barely keeping their head above water with everything that's coming at them at so fast.
Yeah, how do you
And
do
then
that?
some just getting, yeah, and I'm like, because the stuff that Trump is doing and everything that's going on in the background, uh, this has been going on for a while. It's not like they just woke up yesterday and said, "Hey, let's see if there's any corruption in these NGOs." And oh, are they cycling money back to through Ukraine to Friedman back to politicians? Oh, let's look and see that. He said, "We have it all. We know we have it all."
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's like, that's amazing. And it like, so you just didn't wake up yesterday and say, "Oh yeah, we have it all. Now I got to go fill in the blank."
So we've got a hearing going on about Muslim Brotherhood. And there's a Michigan State Senate candidate, Abdul El Sayed, is a Democrat, of course, connected to the terrorists in the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, is this new news for you guys? Maybe this person, but is it new news to you guys?
No.
All right. We've known they went after, if you recall, Michelle Bachmann for stating the obvious back in the day.
Well, there's already a thing out saying that his campaign was backed by over $100,000 from dozens of members of a group with alleged terror ties, which is probably the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, we've known about Muslim Brotherhood being in the upper echelons of our government for.
Oh, it's people.
It's been almost 2 decades. But I remember Michelle Bachmann saying that, and John McCain ripping her a new one.
He who shall not be named.
Right. So I
At the time we didn't know why.
I didn't trust John McCain, so when Michelle Bachmann made those comments, I believed her. Even though I didn't have a whole lot of research behind me at the time. You're going back now quite a while when she said that. She ended up being pushed out of Congress.
Because she was talking about their secrets.
Right. So I would love to hear anybody else's thoughts on what I showed you today. What I tried to present is that what was dropped today is not complete. It's extremely incomplete. And it's clear to me where this is going. Hopefully, I've given you a sense of why I believe that, and you can see what I'm seeing. Yeah, Tim Geithner, Maiden Pew. Tim Geithner at the top of Warbug Pincus. Isn't it interesting that Warbug Pincus is a major backer of CrowdStrike, and his apartment, after the Mueller report, his apartment suddenly burnt up. Somebody needed the insurance money. What do you think?
They're so dirty.
Yeah. It was New Year's Eve, 2019. We caught it. It was a major fire, like a 3-alarm fire. It didn't take long to tie him back to CrowdStrike. I'd already been doing the research, already knew about some of this stuff. So it was pretty interesting to see that name come up. And remember, CrowdStrike, they got their start on coming up with fake viruses, claiming it was a state actor. Shady Rat was China, and Cozy Bear was Russia, when neither were true. And they got a dumb as a box of rocks bimbo out of the Washington Post to write such a favorable thing, and he was able to leave McAfee and start CrowdStrike.
Those names should be a dead giveaway.
You mean the fact that he's got a Ukrainian name?
No. Cozy Bear and Shady Rat. They should be like a dead giveaway.
Right?
They're like comic book characters.
Yeah, they are. Well, it's funny because Cozy Bear, that's Sholtai Boltai. Cozy Bear is from a company that used Alice in Wonderland nicknames. But they were all characters. Humpty Dumpty is obviously not there, but still, they use nicknames from fairy tales. I showed you that. But it was interesting, too, because the Russians, after we found out in 2016 about these emails, Russia arrests the guy that owns that company, Sheltai Boltai, along with 2 FSB officers. He was eventually acquitted. He was forced to shut down his company, which I had a slide, I didn't show it, showing that it was in fact shut down. But the 2 FSB officers were not acquitted. They disappeared off the face of the earth in Russia. Ha. But what they were doing is they were feeding that information back to Clinton operatives.
Oh, that's a reason they disappeared. It went back to Clinton operatives.
Right. So that's what I've got, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I really do.
Well, the Senate just advanced 74 Trump nominees in one vote.
Yeah, they're doing that. They're doing because Trump has got some things over them too. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, light a fire under their butts.
Mm-hmm. So
that's great news and a great show. Thank you, Feisty.
You're welcome. I will talk to you all soon.
As always.
I will talk to you all soon. Everybody, I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for your support. I can't even begin to tell you how much I appreciate it. If you can see forward to do that, my Cash Apps, either Venmo or Cash App, are $Feisty Cat 17. I greatly appreciate the support. Like, share, all the good stuff that you hear about. Boneless Chicken, thank you for the can. I very much appreciate it. God bless you. So everybody have a wonderful time. For those of you in the Telegram chat, just stay quiet for a minute. I'm going to close out the show and I'll come in and talk. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Little girl woke from a dream, an angel by her side, took her hand, she showed no fear, and through his tears he said, when will the people see all they were meant to be? Why do the children cry? No one to dry their eyes. Take a message to the world. Take a message to the world. We are one. We are one. We are one. Lost her way through the years on a dirty sidewalk, alone and in despair. A homeless man, oh, with the angel's eyes said, don't forget why you are here. The feet of his messengers are sure and swift. Everybody has a gift to give. Take a message to the world. Take a message to the world. We are one. We are one. We are one. Take a message to the world. Oh, take a message, little girl. We are one. Everybody has a gift to give. Take a message to the world. Take a message to the world. We are one. We are one.